Boy, we did that. Make some noise, Arkansas. Hey, man, listen, if I haven't had a chance to meet you, you've got to know this. The cool part about that video is that man was not just my arresting officer. He later became my supervisor, and he's sitting right over there. Thank you, Kirk Lane. So I got to say this, man. This has been an awesome day. And we have seen miracle after miracle. We have heard testimony after testimony. So if you're in here today, you can't tell me what God won't do in here. And so I'm going to keep it all the way real with you. I got about 30, 35 minutes, maybe 40 before Rare Breed comes up and does his thing. And so I'm going to tell you, the pastors prayed over me in the back. And I mean, I felt like I was washed in the blood of that water walker. You hear me? Like I almost could have floated up here, man. And I got to tell you this. The only reason that I'm not on one in the parking lot stealing your stuff right now is I got a God that can take broken pieces and turn us into masterpieces. Right? My clean date is February 27th of 2015. That's crazy. But it wasn't always like that. See, in order for you to really know how God shook and moved in my life, you got to understand the pits that he carried me through. Because it wasn't always this Jimmy McGill that was up on stage, man. I was a stick-up artist. I was the first one in the squad to put that iron in your face. Like it was bad. All I knew was getting and using, and it didn't matter what lie had to be told, what lick had to be hit. Am I the only one who spent 10 hours untangling phone chargers? Huh? Am I the only one in here who tried to fix a brand new flat screen with a butter knife? Okay, I need to know I'm in the right place, right? So listen, my gateway drug was not alcohol. It was not marijuana. Though I believe that those things contributed. My gateway drug was untreated childhood trauma. See, when I talk about generational curses, we're going to get into what God did for me. By the world's views, everything about my life is an impossibility and should not have happened. So what I need you to know right now is the God that I got doesn't operate it by the world's rules. And the further we dive into what he's done for me, you're going to see that. And that's a really cool picture of me because that's exactly what we did. We went from handcuffs to cufflinks, right? And I'm not the only one with a success story in here. If you woke up sober today, let me hear some noise. Understand you are the same success that Jesus gave to me. There is nothing special about me. The only thing I do is I recover out loud, sometimes obnoxiously. Some of y'all been mad about me posting. Quit lying. Y'all know, you laughing. Uh-oh. Hey, listen, as far back as I can remember, my childhood was full of violence, full of drug addiction, prostitution, lying, thievery. You guys know what I'm talking about? See, I needed a father. And I'm in no way am I dishonoring my dad. I want you to understand that because God said the first commandment with a promise is to honor your mother and father, right? My daddy did the best he could do. He was also arrested by Kirk Lane. Anybody else in here been arrested by Kirk? Uh-oh. Sozo in the house. Listen, my father needed a needle when I needed a parent. At 66 years old, my father died from an untreated disease of substance use disorder. He still had his drug of choice on his body, y'all. As an elderly man, Medicare eligible, he was still rolling that bowl, man. See, we weren't recovering out loud like we are today. See, we didn't make it a point to make God cool and recovery fun like we do today. They were telling us, shh, we don't talk about recovery. Man, y'all, they was trying to kill us. They wanted you to stay sick. You hear me? And so I want to show you how far God has carried me. By the time I was 9, 10 years old, I'd already seen more violence than most grown men see in a lifetime. To say I came from a unhappy home is an understatement. I didn't just come from a broken home. I didn't see a happy home until the day I broke into one. And I didn't even have the sense to understand that it was a happy home. I just remember thinking it's not fair that this kid gets all this stuff and I ain't got nothing. See, I've seen pictures of my uncles taking me to see my father while he was in Varner, and I was 3 or 4 years old, and my uncle was putting dope in my pockets, and he would hand me to my daddy so they could take a picture. Anybody been to visit somebody doing time? You know how you hold your kid when you take your picture? Well, I was a vessel. See, the devil had his hands on me from an early start because he knew that what he had in store, God was going to flip and use for something mighty. My daddy would take that dope out of my pocket and slip money in it. I remember one time I asked him, how much money did you have in prison, Pop? He said, all of it. He meant it. He was telling the truth. My daddy was an extremely violent man. I watched him catch murder charges when I was 12 years old. I saw him get arrested for rape charges. Yeah, I said that. I'm going to keep it real with you. I saw him just get aggressive. Whatever he wanted to do, he did it. He feared no man, no consequence. The only thing that mattered to him was his drug. Now, every once in a while, I would show a random act of violence. I'd haul off and knock the neighbor's kid in the eye, and my dad would be, oh, that's cute, and he'd rub my head. And we would connect. And guess what that lesson taught me? The more violence I showed, the more my dad identified with me. So by the time I was 11 years old, I'd already stabbed and shot somebody. At 4 years old, I stabbed the neighbor's kid with a potato peeler. Of all things, he slapped my hand, and my natural instinct was to raise it and bring it down. That was the environment, the atmosphere that the devil had me in. At 9, I was playing unattended, no parent in sight. I didn't intentionally shoot the kid that was my best friend. His name was Trey Jackson. We were in Savannah, Georgia. But guess what happens when you leave your children unattended? We do childlike things, right? And so in that atmosphere of child neglect, a thug was born, and I accidentally shot him. But I took that accident and turned it into a reputation. You understand what I'm telling you? Because what you thought about me mattered. And the only people that cared enough about me to think stuff that would impress them were negative influences on my life. And so I grew up in an atmosphere conducive to chaos and violence, and it wasn't long before I followed in my father's footsteps. So I need you to understand this, daddies. Your role and the impact you have on your children is the most vital thing that they are going to have. And we're going to talk about how God used my nemesis to teach me how to be a man. Even in recovery with 3 years clean, I ain't know how to behave, right? And so quickly, I was raised in North Little Rock, Arkansas, a city that's nationally known for gang violence. Anybody seen Banging in Little Rock? Arkansas seems to be famous for two things, meth and gangs. That's the only thing we ever on TV for. Guess what? We famous for something else now. You know what it is? Hey, you can't tell me that Arkansas ain't the national leader for recovery, baby. Look at old Jimmy, North Little Rock. That's right, I was the 5th Backstreet Boy. You see it right there. I was handsome, Kirk Lane. I grew up. Whatever it took to get the attention of whoever was around me, that's what I did, man. And since I was white in a predominant black neighborhood, I'm from Pike Avenue in North Little Rock. Okay, home team. What's crazy is there were people in this room right now that I was in my addiction with that are clean, man. So you can't tell. This thing works for anybody, man. All you need is a little willingness and some want to, man. I quickly became that first person that had twice as much to prove as everybody else because attention made me feel good. And I would go to any length to earn your validation. And so I was the first one to shoot. I was the first one to kick a door in. I kept zip ties with me, y'all. I was a very bad, ugly person, man. I did things now that I still don't want to talk about, but I'm going to tell you the truth. You need to understand how insane I was. I would hit that pipe and immediately think Chad was talking to Abby about me without saying a word. They completely on the other side of the room and the psychosis kicks in. Now you think I'm a punk and I got to prove that ain't nobody leaving till I figure it out. The insanity of it. I would see messages written in the walls, and I would think that it was hallucinations and that I was tweaking. But is it really paranoia when people all over the world are seeing the same thing? I don't know what's going on. All I know is I can tell you that that drug pushed me to the edge, and all of a sudden life didn't matter. I spent 2 years of my life in juvenile. At 14, I was arrested. They gave me a 5-month sentence, and they sent me to training school. I was such a well-behaved kid, they decided to keep me for 2 years. When I came home, I caught another gang charge at 17. I turned 18 on my way to Varner in 1995. I went to prison 5 more times. When I was through doing time, I had 19 felony convictions. So when I talk generational curses, I'm talking poverty, sin, I'm talking prison. I was desensitized to incarceration. Doing time and thugging was such a normal thing in my family. It was a language that we all spoke fluently, y'all. And it's crazy. I spent my life doing whatever I would have to do. That's literally a picture of me taken in Pulaski County Jail, man. I'm not worried about the fact that I just threw my life away and I'm on the way to prison. I'm so worried about my reputation, I'm going to flip a camera off that somebody snuck in so I could be cool, Chrissy. Do you understand what I'm talking about? There's some mug shots because my addiction took me to 3 places. Jails, insanity, and spiritual death. When God called me to recovery, it was like he called Lazarus out of the grave, man. I was the walking dead. Those are real-time mug shots. By the time I was through doing time, I had 19 felony convictions, and I've been to prison 6 times. Anybody got that one cop that's always a pain in your butt where you're from? There he is. Kirk Lane, Arkansas's top cop. He was going to arrest his way out of the problem. See, he thought his job was to protect the community. My job was to get high, and the community was in the way of me getting high. So I'm doing nothing but whatever I got to do, right? It's crazy how God used that man 3 different times in 3 different investigations. He was either the person that arrested me or his team arrested me. I watched him go from a patrolman to a detective to head of the CID. He was a captain in the criminal investigation division. Then he was over the narcotics division. I followed his whole career, y'all. I just did it from the back seat of the cop car. Kirk didn't just arrest me. He arrested my family. He arrested my friends. We all knew him. You know how that dope made us paranoid? The second I hit the pipe, seen anybody taller than me bald, I thought, Chrissy, you would tear, We'd go hide everything. We thought it was Kirk. But I'm going to tell you what, God had a different plan for me. Ain't it funny how the world means things for bad, but Jesus will turn around and use it? The scriptures say that I will use the foolish things to baffle the wise. I need you to know when I found recovery, I had hepatitis C. I'm Hep C free today. I need you to know I had a GED that I got in prison because they told me that was the only way I'd make parole. I was unemployable. I couldn't get a job at a temp service. I couldn't get a job mowing grass. They was afraid I'd steal it after I cut it. I guess they thought I was Moses looking for a burning bush. I might smoke it. And God had a different plan. I stayed clean. I worked wherever I could work. I found recovery, and a message was carried to me. And the only thing that changed was the messenger. It was the same message, Zach, that I'd been hearing for years. That I don't have to get high again, even if I want to. But it was the messenger that made it hit different. See, when it was somebody that I could identify with, and it wasn't somebody that they would let in prison to carry that message because he had long hair and biker tattoos, right? Those aren't the type of people they want to let visit you. But when I came home and I found myself in an atmosphere of recovery, and he said, hey, man, I understand you don't want to open up because you stole all your mom's stuff. And I'm like, dang, dude. And he's like, no, I did it too. It hit different. When he said, I understand that you've been sexually abused by a male babysitter, Jimmy. That's not your burden. You're looking at it through the lens of a child. It hit different. See, and I learned something, that all of you, people in recovery, are uniquely qualified to go back in the same flames that once engulfed you, carrying buckets of water. For those still on fire. That's right, y'all. We are able to carry a message that hits different. Because you know what it's like to sleep on the streets. You know what it's like to use your homeboy's bathroom and unlock the window. If you know, you know. You know what it's like to dig through the trash and get things we threw away that we were done with. That desperation. And we always had hope, Joe. We hoped the dope man that ripped us off twice was going to come back the third time. We hoped that the dope was good, Kirk. But then we get into recovery and we don't want to trust a man with the secrets. And I don't want to let another man help guide me. I don't want to trust God. Listen, I've heard some crazy stories in recovery. I heard a guy tell me one time, he said, listen, my mom took me to the voodoo doctor. He said, the voodoo doctor spit in aluminum foil, put it around a coconut, and stuck it in the freezer. He said I was supposed to get the coconut out 3 times and shake it 3 times a day. Shake it 3 times. And it was going to take the obsession to use away. Now, that's some serious desperation. Now, you so closed-minded, you don't want to believe in God, but you believe in a coconut? It's time to let go of the false ideas, man. Recovery empowered me to do some amazing things. I've got a whole different life today. Here's where the story gets good. 20 years later, I got asked to come speak at the Arkansas State Capitol because I believe in recovering out loud. There was a man on the steps of the Capitol that night. And check this out, y'all. I was on parole, Chad. I had an ankle monitor on. And the head of the FBI was there. Felt out of place. The head of the DEA was there. The governor's senior advisor was there. And then Kirk Lane was there. And he wasn't in a patrolman suit. He didn't have a gun. He had a fancy pinstripe suit and a governor's pin. He had just been appointed by the governor to be over all treatment, prevention, and recovery for the state of Arkansas. Let me tell you what Jesus did, though. While we talking about all things made new and new creations. I walked up to Kirk, man, and I shook his hand. I said, I've been wanting to tell you thank you. It's good to see you. He looked me right in my face, shook my hand, said, it's good to see you too. I knew right then he ain't have a clue who I was. Jesus had truly transformed me. Recovery had given me a new life and made me something new that the man who put me in prison 3 times no longer recognized me. I was made new, baby. And so from that moment on, Kirk and I, we start traveling all over and we're sharing a story of cops and robbers with a happy ending, y'all. He's in the back seat with me. I ain't in the back by myself no more. I don't need that phone. It'll be all right. That phone's the devil anyway. We're at the high schools carrying a message, trying to get the youth to prevent having to go through what we've went through. You're called for that, bro. That's why he got you clean. He didn't get you sober to shut you up. If sobriety is God's gift to us, then my sober life is my gift back. You understand? That's the last sheriff that arrested me. That's John Staley, Lone Oak County, standing in the picture. Look, I'm like the hot dog between two buns. Both of them put me in a jam. This thing worked. Here's your hit. A year after I spoke at the Capitol, I got my 3 years clean. And Kirk said, hey, man, I'm going to have a job opening, and it requires lived experience. I said, man, they ain't going to give me a job. I'm on parole, man. He said, oh, it's going to be a fight, but I'll fight with you. Now, I need you to understand this. State law says felons can't work for state agencies on parole. Okay? Policies and procedures also prevented it in the Department of Human Services. But God said, I made the department, I created the laws, and I am sovereign. And so I got that job. And I became the first parolee to get a position in the state of Arkansas. So you want to talk about modern day miracles, let's talk about going from sitting in prison to sitting in a state position. Because that's what Jesus does. Chain breaker, way maker. You hear me? That was the last jail I was in, Lone Oak County. That was the last place I got high. That was the first place that Kirk and I put a recovery program in. Full circle. That's how God moved. He used my nemesis to be my biggest ally. He took a cop and a robber. He put them together and he changed recovery and reentry for the country, not just Arkansas. They tell our story everywhere, man. That same governor that Kirk went to and he said, you know how many felonies he's got? Kirk said, yeah. He said, man, are you sure? Kirk said, yeah. He said, you better hope it works. That same governor with 6 trips to prison pardoned me. I need you to know this, Arkansas. The size of your prayers are directly proportionate to the size of your faith. If you pray big, he moves big. We changed state law that day because that was the day Kirk found a legislative member and they put a bill in. And that bill was House Bill 1433 that would later become the law of the land, that felons can and should work for state agencies in the role of peer recovery. Now we're going to get to the good stuff, y'all. See, God took me from handcuffs to cufflinks, and my life today looks very different from what it did then. I'm no longer that little boy who was trapped in the trauma from the sexual abuse I experienced. That neglect, it no longer matters. I know my daddy did the best he could, and if he had someone like me to carry a message or someone like you, he might have been a very different father. You understand? God took the love I had for the needle and replaced it with love for people, man. And so let's look at my life today, y'all. If you're in this picture, let me hear you holler. That's my little boy. Some of y'all seen him here earlier. He's never once had to hold my arm off like I did my dad so he could find a good vein. He's never once experienced calling me and me not picking up the phone or calling right back. He'll never know what it's like to need me and me not be there. See, unlike that atmosphere of child neglect I was left in, my little boy is able to go to a good school today, and I'm a present daddy. That's Brandon. Brandon and I got high together for years, man. Brandon's sitting right there clean. That's recovery in action right there. That top picture, that's my facility manager, Brad, right there, baby. We got a 34-bed recovery center because that's how God does it. And that's us out there in the middle of the destruction from the tornadoes, giving back. The same community that we destroyed, we went back and gave back to, man. It's crazy. I paroled out and I found recovery in a recovery residence. Candace, you was with me. Maddie B, you was there with me. Brad, where you at, Brad? My first roommate in my recovery house. That's crazy. He's working at a treatment center. That's nuts, man. And God made a way for me to do it because I thought I could do it better than where I came up at. And it's important that we enjoy the gift, but we can't give the gift more glory than the giver of the gift, right? It's crazy. I want to share this with you because I'm wrapping up. As I was walking out of prison that sixth time, if you would have told me that I would be standing in front of 800 people speaking and preaching, I'd have thought you were still doing dope. I had 2 officers escorting me out of the joint. I had everything I owned in a brown paper sack. Anybody know about that? They were cracking jokes on me as they were walking me out of Newport. Them same COs are probably eating them words they said right now because I proved them a lie. The devil is a lie and Jesus is the way and the truth. If he can walk on water, and look what God did for me. He used a dummy to teach the world something. That's me with the Chief Justice of the Arkansas Supreme Court. Because the same cop that arrested me and put me in prison opened doors for me to write grants that would put peer recovery specialists in drug courts across Arkansas. I've been able to go back in the same jails. I've been featured on magazines. I wrote a book called From Prison to Purpose that's made its way into prisons across the country. Somehow or another, God gave me a social media with hundreds of thousands of followers. It's the coolest thing ever, man. But the best part about it is I get to love God, hang out with my guys all day, be with my wife and my son, and I get to break the generational curses that my daddy couldn't. So no matter what you're going through right now, no matter how discouraged it seems, Dustin, you need to know that we serve a God that makes his best days are when he does the impossible with the most unlikely candidate. If you're here, know that I love you, Jesus loves you, and we are the front line for this fight. You come with a passion that can't be bought, taught, or replicated,